Hey guys, it's Rory here at Oliver Bernard. Thanks for joining us for another Golang in London today. I'm with Tom today, who is self-taught Go developer, works a bit with Python as well. So we're going to speak a bit about both languages and his background and everything around that. So, hey Tom, how's it going?
Hi there. Yeah, I'm not too bad. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. Bit bored of being locked in, but it's getting a bit better week by week. So, yeah, not too bad. But yeah, thanks for joining me today. Obviously, keen to speak to a few people who have self-taught with Go. So, yeah, do you want to give a bit about your background, how you came to work with the language, and things like that?
Yeah, sure. So, as well as being a self-taught Go developer, I suppose I'm a self-taught everything developer. So my background was originally in biomedical science. Um, so I worked as kind of a research assistant, I guess, in industry um, for quite a few years after getting my master's degree. Um, and I kind of I'd always been kind of a nerd and played around with computers my whole life. And I sort of thought I'd been a programmer as a hobby for quite a few years, and I thought I'd kind of start asking around the business and see if there was anything I could help out with. Um, and I kind of met various super supportive people who really helped me progress my kind of programming career to the point where the manager at my job at the time asked me if I could kind of take on a programming task for the company. So this was using some pretty kind of basic computer imaging techniques to automate processing of an experimental endpoint. So the idea was we had this experiment, and it was taking the technicians a lot of time to read it and work out what was going on. And so I was able to kind of automate that. And I kind of discovered through that really I enjoyed programming more than I enjoyed working in the lab. And to be honest, I'm a bit clumsy, so I didn't see my future in that direction. And also, I think, so it's very common for scientists now to be able to code, and some of them pretty well. But I think the difference between me and them was that for them, the code is something that you do to get an answer. Like it's a thing that you use, and if there was something better that meant you didn't have to do it, you probably use that.
Yeah.
Whereas I found myself really kind of obsessing over the details of code, wanting to write good code, but not really knowing how. I knew the unit tests existed, and I wanted to use them, but I didn't really have the background. So from there, I thought, okay, well, I think I want to be a software engineer. And I got my kind of first job in that on a very small team, where I was kind of one of the only programmers. And I took that as a Python job, but it being a small team, things changed very quickly. And our boss kind of decided that Go sounded like a better fit for the project. So I thought, well, okay, you want to be a software engineer, you have to teach yourself things. So I kind of started learning Go that way. Now I work in a kind of much bigger team as part of a much bigger company, which is a kind of total Go shop. So that's all we use. So I've kind of learned a lot more about how to use Go in the wild, I guess, through that experience. And that's where I am today.
Makes sense. Out of interest, actually, obviously you haven't come from a computer science background. Have you found that's made much of a difference in how you picked up the language? Do you think there's sort of building blocks you might have missed, or has it really not been an issue at all?
I suppose that's a difficult one to answer because you never know what you don't know.
Yeah.
So at the moment, I'm studying a part-time computer science degree, which I'm finding really helpful, especially because I like to understand things a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
That said, I think some of the best programmers I've worked with have either not had a computer science degree, or in two cases, haven't had any sort of degree at all. And I don't think that they've been held back in their career. And speaking personally, I think if there was a company who was really obsessed with people having certain credentials, that probably wouldn't be a kind of fun place to work for me. So yeah, that's
Yeah.
kind
No.
of a hazy answer.
Yeah. No. That makes sense. And I think you're right. I think more and more developers are coming from non-computer science backgrounds. Not that there's anything obviously wrong with that, but it's interesting to see sort of where people are coming from. And from your side as well. So you mentioned that you work with Python and Go, although I appreciate not together. What do you see in terms of similarities between the languages, or if not, and is there sort of one that you find better for certain projects than others?
So I think their big similarities is they're both quite easy to pick up. So Python obviously has pretty simple kind of syntax. It's quite easy to learn, and you don't have to touch the deeper bits really if you don't want to, which I think is why it's caught on in science and engineering. Go, I think, is quite similar. The syntax is a bit more mystifying, but once you've kind of got over that initial hurdle, conceptually it's quite an easy language. So for me, as somebody with no formal computer science training who had played around with Python in the past, I was able to be productive very quickly with it. So I think that's a big similarity. There's quite a few differences in terms of language design, which, you know, I guess people probably already know if they're kind of curious about Go. Yeah. I will say that something that I love about Go is types, and I didn't realize that I missed them in Python until I tried to go back. So coming from a kind of dynamically typed language to something that's kind of statically typed has been great. And I find it a bit difficult to go back now. When I'm trying to write Python code for kind of voluntary projects or whatever, it's kind of more difficult to tell what's going on. And I always feel as if I have to write kind of a million assert statements or whatever to do the job that types would do in Go. So that's a big kind of positive difference for me. I think also the philosophies are a little bit different. Like Python is all about, you know, these kind of libraries that you export in and they kind of do all this complex stuff for you. Whereas Go, you can really notice it in things like string processing. So a lot of built-in functions like reversing strings and stuff, you don't get that in Go. You have to build your own. But on the other hand, it kind of keeps the language quite simple. Like I think it's quite easy to pick up. It's quite clean. Like it feels very utilitarian. So a lot of kind of Go project structure and stuff is very opinionated. You have to do it a certain way, and within that framework, the language kind of stays out of your way a lot, which is good. Like I think especially when you've got a kind of relatively big multi-developer project, that's quite useful.
Yeah, makes sense. Well, yeah, thanks for joining me, Tom. Good to get an overview of your background and also a bit more about Go and how it relates to other languages as well. So thank you very much for your time. And yeah, speak soon.
Awesome. Thank you.
Cheers, mate. Bye.